Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Tonight we are going to bake up a loaf of sourdough bread. We're going to make some maple glazed salmon, a lovely squash, green bean fall dish with some saffron rice. So let's start by getting our sourdough loaf out. Had this one kind of cold proofing in the fridge for, I want to say, this one's been close to 3 days, which is like on the max end of it. So I'm going to have to help it out of its little basket a little bit more, but it will still bake up wonderfully. Here we go. There we go. Let me slide this guy over here. Then we're going to give it a nice score and a simple design. There we go. And I like to do it pretty deep. And then we'll do our classic. Here we go. Yeah, good enough. Okay, let's pop this in our heated Dutch oven. So my Dutch oven's been preheating with my oven as it's been up to 500. So it's been in there for about, I want to say like 40 minutes because you want it to be nice and toasty warm. That's going to make this a nice little toasty hot bread oven, and it's trapping that moisture and make it delicious. So put the lid on. We're going to bake this at 500 degrees for 20 minutes. Then we will take the lid off and we'll bake it for 20 minutes at 450 degrees. So I'm going to pop this in here. And I'm going to set my timer for 20 minutes. And let's start prepping up our glaze and our veggies and whatnot. Okay, so we're gonna mince up some garlic to start for our maple glaze, and then we will slice up some onions and start caramelizing them. Here's my garlic. So I'm gonna grab a couple cloves of garlic out of our bag here, and I'm gonna mince it up, and then we will cook it with some butter, add some maple syrup, a little bit of soy sauce, some onion powder, and some garlic salt. And that's going to be the base of our glaze for our salmon, which will be just lovely. So I want to use fresh garlic so that we just get that wonderful flavor in there. And I'm going to mince it up, pretty, not to a paste, but pretty good size. And this will add some just lovely garlic flavors. And I feel like the maple, the garlic, and the soy or soy sauce are going to just work really well together. Here we go. So we've got it fairly minced up, and we're going to add our butter into our little dish here. I don't need a whole lot of butter, but I do have 7 good-sized salmon fillets, so I'm going to probably do about 2 tablespoons of butter in here. We're going to let that start to melt, and then we will add in our garlic. I do want my base of my pan to be melted with some butter first before I add the garlic in, so I don't end up like burning it. We'll also add a little bit of lemon juice to our marinade. Okay, I'm gonna add this to the side, and while we're prepping for that, I'm gonna dice up some onions. We've got a big yellow onion here. Part of this is going to go with our veggie dish, and part of this is going to go with our saffron rice. So we're going to use, a little half and half. And take off this whole outer kind of layer here. And I'm going to do 2 different types of cuts on our onions. So for the ones that are going to go with our green beans, our butternut squash, and our bacon there, I'm going to do a slightly bigger dice on it so you have nice kind of bigger chunks of onion. And then for the one for our saffron rice, we are going to do a more of a smaller mince to it. I'm going to slice it up nice and thin, and then we'll cut it up. So it'll be smaller pieces that will kind of blend in with the rice. There we go. And again, this is a really big onion, so it's actually probably the same as 2 smaller sized onions. There we go. And now that our butter is melted over there, I'm going to turn my heat down to low because I don't want my butter to brown, really just to kind of melt so it can start infusing some of this garlic in it. So we've got kind of like our tablespoon of minced up garlic here. Okay, and we've got our onions. I'm going to just dice up some of these smaller pieces. Here we go. And that is going to be for our risotto. But before we get that kind of going, let's start sauteing up our bacon for our squash, because we're going to cook our butternut squash and our green beans in this lovely bacon. I've got some thick cut bacon here, which will make it a little bit heartier than the thin cut. Now, I'm not going to be using all of this bacon because this is a lot of bacon, but I'm going to grab a couple slices out here to saute it up. It'll give it great flavor, and we can use that fat to really crisp it up. So I'm going to probably grab, let's see, I'm going to do 4 slices of this thick bacon here, which is probably, if you were going to use a regular size bacon, it'd probably be closer to 6 slices because this is pretty thick. And then I'm just going to slice it up into nice, just using my kitchen shears here. I find it's a little bit easier to cut up the bacon with this than it is with a knife. And that way I'll have nice kind of bigger chunks. I don't want them to quite to be as small as bacon bits, but a little bit bigger. And a little bit, I don't want them to get too crunchy, but more of like a chewy, crispy texture to it. Let me wash my hands real quick. Okay. And let's get that starting to kind of cook up over here. And what we're going to do while we're waiting, we're going to start caramelizing our onions for our rice. So I'm going to add in about, I want to say maybe a tablespoon and a half of olive oil over here. I'm going to turn my temperature down to about a 4, and we'll add in our minced up onions and let those kind of caramelize and bring out their nice flavors. There we go. And let me grab a spoon so we can give this a nice stir and kind of coat it up. Okay. While we are waiting on our bacon over here to kind of cook up, we're not going to use all of our squash. I'm actually just going to cut off and use the fat, fuller part of this, and I'll save the bottom part for another day. And I'm going to cut off the stem. There we go. And that way I have this nice level surface here that I can peel up my butternut squash with. And now I find it is just much easier to peel it using a knife and just kind of follow along the edges of your squash than it is to try to get out your peeler. Because most squashes are coated in a wax to prevent them from going bad, which makes them extremely difficult to peel with a peeler. And it's just such an awkward big shape that I find good old chef knife works just wonderful. Okay, do I got all the edges? Yep. Now I'm going to get a spoon and we're going to stir our garlic here in just a second. That's kind of simmering in our butter. And then we'll toss our bacon. I want this garlic to kind of infuse into the butter for a little bit before we kind of drizzle it over our salmon. We will be roasting our salmon in the oven during the second stage of cooking our sourdough. So our oven will be nice and hot at about a 450. That way we'll get a nice high temperature sear on it. And I feel like that works really well when we're doing kind of like a glaze versus trying to pan fry it and then make a sticky glaze to go on it. There we go. Just breaking apart our bits of bacon here. That way they can all kind of toast up. I think my husband wishes I added more bacon in here. Do you need more bacon? Okay, we'll add more bacon. My husband does not like salmon, but since he's the only one, he doesn't get a say in it. But I will happily give him more bacon. Does doubling the amount of bacon serve you? I'm sure he'd be like, you can cook the whole thing of bacon up. We'll just add in a few more so he can eat his salmon covered in bacon bits. That's what he wanted me to wrap the salmon up in bacon and do a maple glazed bacon salmon, which actually sounds pretty delicious. But I feel like that would be done much better on a grill. So, and not today, but maybe I'll experiment with it in the future. Wash my hands up. Okay. Now he should have ample amount of bacon bits to enjoy. There we go. I'm going to break them apart again so they're not just big chunks. And this is a thick cut of bacon so that it will remain a bit more chewy versus crispy and crunchy. There we go. And I will say it smells wonderful. The garlic is really, it's very aromatic right now. Okay. Let's give our onions a little stir over here. Again, we're cooking our onions, our minced up onions over a 4, so kind of a medium-low heat. That way they can kind of caramelize up nicely, bring out their sweetness. Okay, let's get this bit of a guy chopped up here. We can make some little discs, and then we will cube them up. That way we can saute them. Unfortunately, I will say butternut squash is just a really awkward squash to kind of cut up and cook with, but it is delicious. There we go. And now we're going to cube this. And I might not even use all of the ones that I cut up, so I might actually save some because it is one that is, you get a lot of veggie out of a butternut squash. They're actually reasonably priced for how much you can get of them. There we go. Now you could also just buy, they already in like the refrigerator section of the vegetable produce area, you can always get cubed up butternut squash, which if you don't want to do the extra work, you can pay the little premium to have them cut it up for you. But that works as well. And I'm going to say, I think I'll do one more disc, but I will save this with my squash. Maybe we'll make a soup with this or something like that, but I'm going to save it. And then we're going to check on our garlic here because it's starting to simmer up nicely. And then I'm going to give my bacon a little bit of a stir. There we go. So even though I think I only used like a third of my squash, I've got a good amount of squash here, especially with the green beans.
You have a question? Is butternut squash sweet?
It is. It's if you've never had like it before, it's got notes that are similar to sweet potatoes and pumpkin. It's just a sweeter one. The texture is much more smooth and delicate than pumpkin or Sweet potatoes are very dense. Butternut squash is very light and delicious, which why it makes a really great soup as well. Okay, now that our garlic is kind of infusing in here with our butter and starting to get a nice little golden edges to it, we're going to add in our soy sauce and our maple syrup and a little bit of lemon juice to make our kind of our glaze. So we're going to add in about 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. About 2. And that's going to give us the saltiness to our glaze on here. And then we're going to use maple syrup, and we're going to use about 2 tablespoons of that as well. So, 1, 2. So kind of equal parts of both the maple and the soy sauce. Because I will say with soy, it is always nice to pair it with a sweetener like honey or maple or whatnot or brown sugar, because that cuts through a little bit of that saltiness. And then we're also going to use a little bit of lemon juice. We don't need a whole lot of lemon juice, but it does. The citrus just adds a note that adds the right complexity to the glaze. Here we go. So I'm going to squeeze. This is about 1/3 of a lemon, so it's going to be about a teaspoon or so of our lemon juice, and fresh lemon juice if you have it. Okay, let me give our bacon a quick little stir here. We're getting it nice and crispy, and then we'll pull it out, and then we'll start sauteing our onion and our butternut squash in it, and then we'll throw in our green beans and some pumpkin seeds, so it'll be really lovely.
What setting are you cooking the butter on?
I have that cooking on a 2, but it's pretty, because this is a very small pan, it's going to conduct the heat a little bit faster than a larger pan. So if you were to use a larger pan, you could probably do it a little bit higher, but I didn't want to scald or burn my butter or my garlic, so I'm more of like a hot infusion of it. Okay, we've got our onions here. I'm going to turn this up just a smidge to about a 5 now that it's getting hot, so that we can get a nice good caramelization on it. And then we're going to add in some saffron and some chicken bouillon with a little bit of water for our base. And then I've got some frozen sticky rice that we're going to put in there to make this nice kind of saffron infused rice, which will really, saffron's got a little bit of a sweet note to it, and it will bring all these flavors together. Okay. I'll let these cook up for just a little bit longer, but while we're waiting, I'm going to bring my pan over here, and we're going to get ready for our salmon, but I just need to add a few more things to our salmon glaze. So we have right now here maple in here, soy sauce. I'm going to add a little bit of onion powder, which will give a nice savory and a sweetness to it. So I want to say 1.5 teaspoons. And then we'll add just a pinch of garlic salt. I would say like 1/2 teaspoon. You don't need much because you do have that soy sauce in there as well, but I do like to add a little bit. And we do have this cooking over our kind of medium-low temperature. There we go. And then I'm going to just taste a small. Delicious. So I'm going to take that come over here, and we're going to bring our salmon fillets over there, and we're going to kind of drizzle this over. But I think our bacon is just about ready to take out here. I don't want to cook it too crispy because I don't want it to be crunchy in our thing, but more of like a chewy crunch in it. Let me get a plate with a paper towel on it so it can kind of soak up some of its extra grease when I pull it out. There we go. Give this, you can see our onions are starting to get this nice caramelization to it, this golden color. That's the natural sugars in the onions coming out and caramelizing. Okay, I'm going to turn this down low while we kind of fish out our bacon. I'll put it on here. I'll have to warn the cameraman that this bacon will be hot for a few minutes, so do not try to steal some or you'll burn yourself. Here we go. He's eagerly awaiting it. Hopefully he heeds my warnings. He's burned himself several times trying to steal a cookie or whatnot. And I'm always like, told you so. Here we go. Getting all the little bits out because if you leave any in there, they'll just burn. But we've got our bacon right here. It should be a nice kind of crispy with a little bit of a chewiness to it. I don't want it to be hard and crunchy. And we've got this again on low. So this is about a 2 now. I'm going to add my onions in for just a hot second so those can kind of caramelize up in that bacon grease. Just got to search for them. There we go. And then we'll add in a little bit. I'll mince up some garlic here in just a second. And then we will add that in for about 30 seconds to a minute. And then we'll add in our butternut squash. But cook it nice and low to get it caramelizing. So let's move our salmon over here so we can kind of drizzle it. I'm going to put it on some parchment paper here. That's just going to make cleanup a little bit easier. And this is about 2.5 pounds of salmon here. And I made sure to kind of pat them dry so that they're not super wet, but it is fresh salmon, not frozen. And now you can always use frozen salmon, but you do want to make sure that you have really blotted it dry because when you freeze it, it gets waterlogged. And then that gives you a drier texture. There we go. Let's give our onions a quick stir here. I'm going to turn it down to about a 2 since it's almost ready for the next stage. And we're going to go and grab our sourdough in just a second, but I want to get these marinating first. So we're going to drizzle our glaze over each kind of salmon fillet. And again, this is made with butter, garlic, maple syrup, soy sauce, onion powder, and garlic salt.
Do you have a question? Is it wild caught or farm raised?
This is good old, let's see, I'm going to say it is probably farm raised because it is Publix and kind of bought the one that was on sale. So probably farm raised, but it is delicious. I will say once you've gone to Alaska and eaten their salmon, all salmon in continental United States tastes the same. Apparently they serve us dog food grade salmon here in the continental United States, which in Alaska is illegal. So, you know, we get treated so well here. Okay, let's get our loaf out. Let me grab a trivet right here. So we cooked it at 500 with the lid on for 20 minutes. Now we're going to take the lid off. We should have our nice pop, which we do. You can already see, look at that expansion score, how much it's already popped out, which is going to be a wonderful loaf. And we're going to slide this in here, and we're going to cook this for 20 minutes at 450. So you want to bring the temperature down so you don't get too dark of a top on your crust. And I like to do mine for 20 minutes if I can. There we go. Because I like a nice golden brown crust, which gives you that chewy crust without it getting crunchy or rock hard. I find if you cook it too long, it gets very, very crunchy the next day, and it gets kind of hard to eat. Or as Teddy likes to say, it hurts my mouth. Okay, we've got our onions caramelizing here. We will throw our salmon in the oven for the last kind of like 10 minutes of the cooking of the bread because it doesn't need very long to cook, about 10 minutes for our glazed salmon. I'm going to grab a handful of garlic cloves. This will probably be about a tablespoon minced up if you want to just use garlic. And we're going to throw this into our bacon grease with our onions. We'll let it saute for a minute, and then we're going to throw in our cubed up butternut squash to start sauteing. And then we're going to put a lid on it so it will get tender while it crisps up. Now you could also roast this in the oven, but since I'm doing my sourdough in the oven, I didn't want to pop this in there at such a high heat. But you could also roast your butternut squash in the oven. Okay, let's get our garlic in here. We're going to let this kind of saute up for a minute. And I'm going to give it a little stir. And then I have a little bit of this garlic I'm going to throw in. It's probably like a half a teaspoon. I'm going to throw this over into our rice for our rice dish. Gives it a little extra flavor. Here we go. And we'll give this a nice stir. And then we're going to add in some saffron threads and let that kind of simmer for a second. Let's get this up to about a 4 now that our onions have started to get translucent. We're going to turn it up so we can cook our butternut squash at a good temperature.
You have a question? Where can they find the garlic peeled in a bag?
So I got this in the refrigerated produce section. So it's just the Spice World garlic, fresh and peeled. So you know where you can buy those little container of herbs, and you can get these right there. It's just in a bag, kind of tucked at least at the grocery stores that I kind of shop at. It's there. Okay, let's get our saffron. And you don't need a lot of saffron to get some great flavor in it. So I'm going to put a couple of threads in here. Let me get a couple off the top of this. I always feel like I was told growing up that this was like the most expensive spice in the world per weight. There we go. And so when I say you don't need very many to get a lot of flavor and color, I probably put in like a 1/4 of a teaspoon of threads in here, but they're going to add a lot of flavor and, of course, this wonderful yellow color to our rice. We're going to let it toast up in the butter for just a little bit, and then we're going to add in just a little bit of water and some bouillon, chicken bouillon, and then we'll kind of let it simmer, almost like make a soup for a little bit, and then we'll put in our frozen rice in it. Okay, let's get this. We've got our garlic in here. I'm going to throw our butternut squash that we've cubed up into our onions and our bacon grease. And I'm going to make sure we're going to kind of stir them up and coat them up well. And then we will put a lid on them and let them kind of steam fry with that lid on. But you want to make sure you coat them up with this kind of bacon grease first. Here we go. So we're going to give this a nice little stir through. Oops, man overboard. Okay, and then I'm going to turn this up to about a 6. I'm going to push all of my squash down, just like if I were doing a fried potato. And then let me grab my lid. We're going to add our lid onto it. And then let me check my time. Okay, in 5 minutes, we're going to put our salmon in. Okay, I've got my lid on. We're going to let that cook up. And now I'm going to add in some water, and then we'll add in a scoop of chicken bouillon. So I'm not using all this. I'm going to put in about a cup, between maybe 2/3 of a cup in right now. Here we go.
Good question. What brand are your pans?
So I have 2 types that I primarily use. I've got my all clad, which are all of my like solid metal pans. And then I've got my hex clad, which are my non-stick pans. So all clad, I've had all of mine for almost 17 years. So they've held, they're amazing. This is the 3-quart saute pan by them, and it's wonderful, especially for like rices and risottos. And then my hex clad, I got these about 2 years ago, and they are wonderful. They're really easy to clean, and I have yet to scratch them. So they've gotten a good review from me so far. And I feel like if they can survive me in the kitchen, because I am not the most delicate chef, then they can withstand, some good use. And I feel like I cook a lot, so I'm heavy hard on my stuff because it gets used a lot. So I do love them. I actually have them in my Amazon storefront because I love them so much. Okay, let's put some chicken bouillon in here. And we're going to add, at the very end, we're going to add some fresh green onions to it. It'll give it a pop of color and a nice kind of onion flavor to it. Since we are going to be using this chicken bouillon to season all of our rice, I'm going to put in a good heaping spoonful, like a tablespoon, because I want that chicken and that saffron to really come through and flavor it up. There we go. And then I'm going to add a little bit more broth in here, or water in here. There we go. So I think I've put about a cup to maybe a cup and a fourth already in here. I don't want to put too much in because, again, I don't want to flood my rice because we're using the frozen rice, but you do want to add a little bit. It helps it kind of soak it up and keeps it nice and delicious. We're going to bring this up to a nice temperature. Once it gets to a simmer, I will throw in our rice. And I've just got, you can use regular rice too, but I love this stuff. It's sticky rice. You can get it in the freezer section. This is Innovations. P.F. Chang's has one as well. Both great. I just buy whatever one's on sale. Okay, let's check on our butternut squash here. I'm going to grab a spatula so we can kind of do a little flippy flip. There we go. And again, we're cooking this butternut squash in our bacon grease, which is going to add a whole lot of great flavor to it. But we will season it up at the end with some garlic salt and onion powder and a little bit of pepper. And we do have garlic, some minced up garlic in here as well. Let's add this guy up. Turn it up a little bit. Here we go. Now we're getting this nice kind of simmer to our broth here. And you can see that golden color is coming out from the saffron. Those little threads in there, those are the saffron threads. And they add so much flavor. You don't need a whole lot. If you ever want more color to pop out from them, you can crush them into a powder and then add it in, and that will give you a stronger yellow color as well as a slightly stronger flavor.
Do you have questions about how long do you cook the squash for?
The squash, I'm going to cook it until it's tender. So depending on how big you cut it or how high you're cooking it, it can take a variation in time. But as long as it's tender, as in if I were able to push a fork and push it through, then I will know it's done. I'm going to say it's going to be around 20 minutes, give or take, 5 minutes for it. Okay, we're going to start adding in. This has just been defrosted, so it's not heated up, but it's not frozen still. We're going to mix this in here so it can soak up our lovely thing. And then, perfect, we're going to add, after I get this mixed in there and we stir it up, we're going to go put our salmon in the oven for it to cook up. There we go. And then we're just going to mix this broth all into our rice and just mix it around a lot because you don't want just the bottom edge to absorb it. You want all of it to get that flavor in. But as you see how it kind of really picks it up pretty quickly, which is why you want to just de-thaw the rice instead of cook it, because you don't want it to steam up in the bag. You want it to steam up in here with this nice flavored broth. So it gives you this wonderful flavor without having to cook up a fresh batch of rice. Here we go. Now I'm going to turn this down really low. You want to make sure you keep it low and that you don't have it too hot, or you'll end up scalding your rice on the bottom of your pan. And take this off for a second. Let's go put our salmon in the oven to roast up. We can take a quick peek at our sourdough that's cooking in here. Okay. Now I should be able to get this way, but let me see. Yes. So I have it on the top one. I've got my sourdough right over here, and it should be ready right around the time that sourdough beeps for us. I'll check it, but it's going to take around, 10 minutes, give or take 2 or so minutes. And this again is cooking it at a nice high temperature of 450. If you want to do it in convection bake at 425 or an air fryer as well at 425 works well for about 8 to 10 minutes as well. Here we go. Mixing this in. Beautiful. Let's get. You can see our squash is already crisping up on the edges there. Beautiful. And it's already getting pretty tender. As you can see, I was able to stick my spatula into it on most of them. So this will be done perfectly. Beautiful. Now I'm going to turn it down and we're going to add our green beans in here in just a second. I'm going to prep them. I'm pretty sure we're good. These only take about 5 to 10 minutes to cook up. You just are going to look for this nice vibrant green color. I'm just going to snap some of my really long ones in half so that I don't have just giant green bean swords in here. But fresh green beans, you don't really want to use a frozen green bean because those frozen vegetables are always blanched, which means they're kind of splashed in hot water right before flash freezing. And therefore, when you throw them in and try to saute them, they get soggy because they've already been cooked in water. There we go. Now, we'll know that our green beans are nice and cooked and have that tender, but still a little bit of firmness to them, a tender crisp, is when they turn a really vibrant green. And that's always the cue that I always say when I'm cooking vegetables like broccoli, green beans, asparagus, is look for the color versus a time. The color is going to tell you better than the time because you can have fatter green beans or fatter asparagus that can take longer, or broccoli. So we're going to coat them up in our bacon grease here. And then I'm going to pop our lid on for just a second, let them kind of steam up. But what they'll do is right now they've got kind of a paler color to it. In a few minutes, they're going to have this really vibrant green color. And then we'll throw in our bacon and our some pumpkin seeds to add a little bit of a crunch. Okay, let's get our rice here. You can see it's already absorbed most of that liquid in here, which is wonderful. I'm going to get a little spoon here and we're going to taste it, make sure I don't need to add any more flavor, but I think I got it covered with the bouillon. Might add a pinch of garlic salt. Here we go. A little shake over, like a half a teaspoon. And then we're going to chop up some green onions to add in there. This is going to add a nice little brightness to it. And I think just makes it lovely. And it kind of brings along with that maple things. We're going to add a little bit of green onions on top of our salmon as well. So I'm going to kind of cut off the white tips of it because we're not going to be sauteing these really. They're just going to add in some extra flavor. And I'll use the paler ones. They're going to go into our rice, and then the darker green ones will go over our salmon. There we go. So we'll save this bit to kind of sprinkle over. And I'll have this one we're going to throw on top of our rice. I'm not going to mix it in yet. There we go. And But there's, you can see it's starting to get this nice brighter green, darker green color. That's telling me that they're almost ready. We're going to throw in a little bit of spices now. There we go. Just give them a nice toss. And just look, I'm going to grab a fork and I can show you how tender this butternut squash is. So we'll pull up and you can see I can just push right through it with my fork. We're going to try to. Delicious. Okay, let's season these guys up. Now, again, they have a bit of flavor already from the bacon and the onion and the garlic. But we're going to add some garlic salt. So a nice sprinkle over. You're going to probably want around a teaspoon, teaspoon and a half in here because there's a good amount of vegetables. We're going to add some onion powder, which will add a kind of a sweet, savory flavor to it and absorb up some of that liquid. About a teaspoon. And then I'm going to add just a slight shake of black pepper, like a fourth of a teaspoon. We're going to let that hydrate up for a second, and then we'll mix it in, followed by our bacon bits and our pumpkin seeds. Here we go. Let's mix it in. Beautiful. You can see a lot of the places where those saffron threads are touching it, they're leaving a more bright yellow color to it. There we go. I will say there's a couple things that I use saffron for. You know, paella is a very common dish, and then there's a soup that I use saffron in it. But I love to make a saffron risotto, and then one of my son's favorite things that I make, and I typically only make them once a year for Santa Lucia, are saffron buns. Because saffron, they turn it yellow, and Santa Lucia is a holiday in Sweden that celebrates that the longest days of winter or the darkest nights are almost over. It means that the days are getting longer. So they have saffron buns because they give them this nice yellow color, which kind of signifies light. And he loves it. So every year when I make them, and it's typically on December 12th because Santa Lucia is on the 13th, I make this whole counter is full of saffron buns. And we give them out to friends and family, but I swear my son eats like 30 of them over a course of like 3 days because he eats them for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Okay, these are looking pretty darn good, so I'm going to turn that heat off now, and I will make sure to save some bacon. He's like, you don't need to add any. We're going to add in our bacon to it that we kind of crisped up at the very beginning. And then we're going to add in about a 4th cup of pumpkin seeds. This is going to add a nice little crunch to it, a nice little texture to it. But you don't need to go crazy on it. I find a little is perfect. But if you go overboard in it, then you've got too much crunch in here. Okay. Ooh, losing some of my rice over here. I'll have to try it. Delicious. Okay, let's get ready to take our bread out because that is going to be ready in just a second. I'm going to get this over here. Got this turned off. This turned off. Okay, let's head and grab that out. I can smell the maple syrup caramelizing on my pan. It has a lovely fragrance.
I do have a question. Do you know what time you'll be streaming tomorrow?
I'm not 100% sure yet. I think we're going to be doing a lunchtime, I think we're going to do a dinner and a late night tomorrow. Kind of prep up. We've got soccer and football games tomorrow. Okay, we've got our sourdough bread, and then I'm going to go and grab our salmon since it is done as well. So let me swing back here. Beautiful. Okay. Move this right over here. You can see our kind of a bit of our maple glaze has kind of caramelized on our parchment paper, which is why I put it there to make it there. But it's got this nice, lovely kind of sweet and soy sauce over it with maple. soy sauce, garlic, butter, a little bit of lemon juice, but absolutely lovely. Let's grab our sourdough out of our Dutch oven, and then we'll sprinkle our salmon with some green onions, and we'll be ready to serve up. Okay, always. Now, when you bake up your sourdough bread, you always have to let it sit for about 10 minutes before you carve into it, but always take it out of your Dutch oven so that doesn't continue to cook on the bottom. So here is our beautiful, we've got our nice expansion score, our golden brown bottom, and of course, our pretty wheat leaf design on here. So we've got a nice little pop on it, and it will be ready and delicious to eat in just a few minutes. Here we go. Slide that over there. Let's get our green onions. I'm going to sprinkle this a little bit over each one.
You have a question? Have you ever made something that you didn't like?
There are a couple things that I make that I don't like because I make them because my family likes them, like pumpkin pie. I do not like pumpkin pie or lemon tarts, but my husband and my children like them, so I make them for them. Now, there has been times where I have, especially in my earlier years of cooking, I have made a couple of things. I do remember the very first time I made a pumpkin soup, and this was when I was in like middle school. And it was the worst pumpkin soup I have ever had because I used like a can of pumpkin and just broth, and it was awful. But I have progressed over the last 20 some years to know how to make a good pumpkin soup. But most of the times, if it's something, it's because I don't like either spicy or I don't like the texture. I don't like anything with a pudding texture. But I like pretty much most foods. I'm not picky like the rest of my family. And the nice thing about being the one who cooks is you get to decide what to make. Okay, let's get ready to serve up our dinner. Get this guy. Love. Sourdough is just one of my favorite breads. Okay. Let me grab a spatula here. Let me grab my little shovel. And let's get ready to serve up here. Okay. For dinner tonight, we have a lovely chicken saffron rice where we sauteed up onions with some saffron threads and chicken bouillon, and then we added our sticky rice to cook up in there. We have our delicious maple glazed salmon that we baked in the oven. We made a lovely glaze using maple syrup, soy sauce, garlic, lemon juice, and a little bit of butter. And we baked it in there for about 8 minutes. And then, of course, for a nice little splash of fall, we have sautéed butternut squash with green beans, onions, bacon, and pumpkin seeds for a nice kind of savory, delicious fall veggie dish. And of course, we'll have a slice of our wonderful traditional sourdough loaf to go with it. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to that link and you can always search for what we made and watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in it. I've got my hex-clad pans, I've got my all-clad pans, my baking sheets, my knives, cutting boards, all the different gadgets I use in the kitchen, I have in there for you guys to check out as well. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.